our goal is to connect the cue and the action. Repetition alone might take 100 reps, okay? Arbitrary numbers. But if we add reinforcement into the mix, that might take 30 or 50 because we're enjoying the experience immediately while we're doing it. Our brain has such an easier time associating that cue with that action and that action with that reinforcement. Today, I want to talk about how I use reinforcement to help me do what I ultimately want to do. Now, first and foremost, I'm not a scientist. This is just my personal experience. The first thing I want to go over is the shift from reward to reinforcement. Because when we think of reward, we think of this thing we have to earn. We think of this thing that's far out into the future that we're going to go day in, day out, and finally, after months or years or whatever of effort, achieve that thing. That's a full different type of motivation. What I want to do is really go micro with it, reward the individual behaviors that are going to hopefully lead us to that future. Okay, and that to me is reinforcement. We want to make sure that we're reinforcing ourselves during the experience of the behavior that we're doing. Okay, if we think about the habit loop, cue, action, reinforcement, which I've shifted from cue, routine, reward, because that reward is so tricky. It feels like this thing, like a smoothie we can get after the actual behavior. But as some early research shows, it has to be in such a small time window, like a minute after you do the thing, for your brain to associate this reward with this behavior. So in my opinion, and when we look at some animal studies like don't shoot the dog, all that stuff, it's like, how can we really make these one and the same? How can we temptation bundle to make the experience of that thing either more sensational, more enjoyable, just better, right? If we can laugh more while we're doing the thing, if we can be happier while we're doing the thing, then we're going to enjoy that experience more. Then we're going to get that combination of this cue to that action and that reinforcement to that action, which ultimately just connects the cue with the action. The way I like to look at reinforcement is it's kind of this glue that pulls together the cue and the action. The more singular that we can make the cue action response, the better we're going to be, because we're making that thing an automatic reaction to that stimuli. And if we can control our context, make it stable and enjoyable, then we're going to close that gap so much quicker than just relying on repetition alone. Here are a few helpful reframes. So moving from time alone, it's not an amount of time it takes to get a habit, it's repetitions. Okay, great. But repetition alone is not enough. Or it might be, but it's going to take so much longer, right? That's the mind over matter, the grit only approach. But when we really take the habit first approach, that allows us the ability to go, oh, it's not just how hard I work. It's how much can I get out of the work that I do. And an easy thing to do is to add reinforcement during the process of that behavior. So if we can make sure that we're enjoying the process, whatever it might be. Sometimes you enjoy this challenge. So if you can make it a micro challenge, something that you're achieving, right on the edge of your ability, that 4% flow state kind of fluctuation, if you can get there, then it's a very enjoyable experience. If you can make it more sensational, like a warm mug or chewing seeds in my case, while I'm working, making that experience enjoyable, a rewarding experience, a reinforcing experience, as opposed to the reward after. Here are some reasons why the reward after does not always work. One, motivating ourselves to do for that thing becomes extrinsic. Extrinsic rewards, extrinsic motivation is not as reliable. It's not the long-term sustainable approach that we're after. Sure, in the short term, sometimes it's very useful, but in the long term, it's not, at least for me. And again, if you're gonna have this thing right here, let's say you're trying to rely on the reward, not doing it during and just after within a minute. Well, then that thing is going to be staring you in the face the whole time. That is, if you are to be able to do it within a minute of your finishing of that behavior, then you're going to have that reward right on hand. It's going to have to be a hot reward, like a hot trigger, hot reward. And if you're doing that, then it's just there staring at you in the face. And if you're working for an hour, the seeds are right there, but you can't have them. You're withholding from yourself, showing yourself with your action that, hey, you don't deserve this thing until you do this. And if we've learned anything from positive psychology and Sean Aker, you have to start with happiness, okay? If you want success, happiness is that lead domino. It does not work in the reverse, because if we take the reverse approach, it's the grass is greener on the other side syndrome, right? We always think we can keep striving and we're gonna get there. It's gonna be more, it's gonna be better, it's gonna be worth it. But that's not the case. That's not how we operate best. Or again, I say we here, but I really am speaking for myself, and this might translate to some of you. So if we understand that reward is out, right? That's not the right approach. We're moving from after reward to during reward, a reinforcing experience. Reinforcing is a beautiful umbrella term because it just basically means that this is going to make this behavior more likely to happen in the future. Okay. So in a way, I suppose, and again, not scientists, but context being stable and enjoyable is going to be reinforcing, right? Because the more stable your context can be when you're doing that behavior, graduating it into a habit, that's going to be more likely to occur the next time if you have that stable context to rely on. Here's a metaphor that sums it up simply. If we're to look at the total amount of willpower that it's going to take to gain a habit, the less, the better, right? If we're going to be economical with our living, then the less willpower we can use to make this thing become an automatic, effortless behavior, the better. So what's one approach? One approach is just gritting it out, trying to repeat it, not worrying about your context, all that stuff. That's going to take a heck of a long time. Now, if we are to make a stable context better, less repetitions, less willpower. If we're to start smaller, so we're not using all this motivation in the beginning to do a 1 hour rep, we're starting smaller. It's an easier, less limbic friction to overcome in the beginning. We're making the transition point easier to do, okay? Less total willpower. We're starting small. We're widening that lane, widening that highway. Beautiful. And if we're to add reinforcement to the mix, then we're going to decrease it even further. It's looking at the ingredients all out on the map. Can you get a stable environment, make it consistent, make it rewarding, right? The experience itself rewarding. Get plants, get lights, get seeds, get tea, whatever those are to you. That's my bracket of enjoyable things while I'm doing this. Or music, right? Just look up temptation bundling and do anything that you enjoy while you're doing the other thing. So if we can stack the deck in our favor, less willpower, more habit. That's ultimately what we want to do. It's very simple when you say it on paper. It's still difficult to execute, which is our biggest problem as humans, to go from intention to behavior. We all know what we want to do, okay? That's not what we're trying to solve here. You already know what to do. This is an approach to enact that knowledge, to make that intention become this behavior, because we're taking the habit first approach of going cue, action, reinforcement, using this reinforcement to smush together that action and that cue. Okay, if we can do that, we can become who we want to be. Take the habit first approach. Trust me. And my name is Chris with Hack That Habit. I'm here to answer any of your habit or behavior questions. Again, not a scientist, but I've had 7 years of going from intention to behavior to habit to identity, massively deep practice. And I'm still on the journey, right? That's why I like to say I'm a habit teammate, because I'm not the pinnacle of human success. I'm not this master of behavior, okay? I've gotten a lot better and my life has improved because of that. And that's what I want to share with you. So if you're on that journey as well, hit me up in the comments, ask me whatever you want. I'll give you my honest opinion. And if I don't know something, I try to be quite frank about that. Like, I'm not actually sure. So if you want a hand to hold or a hand to show you a potential way for what you want to do and who you want to become, let me know. I'll see you in the next video.